All right. All right. There we go. Okay. Now we've got audio, guys. We should have audio.
So you got to
All
start
right.
over
All
all
right.
this
So
list.
Run it backwards.
we're going to run it back a little bit. All right. So, again, welcome to the Keaton Beach Fishing Report, or the Big Bend Fishing Report, excuse me. I am Jay Carson. This is Kenny Mullins. This is Pat McGriff down here on the end. We got the legendary Pat McGriff with us. Keaton Beach Vacation Rentals and Trading Post are sponsoring this. I'm going to run through
the live audience.
Yeah, I'm going to run through all of the Keaton Beach Vacation Rental houses again here in a bit. I did it a few minutes ago, but you guys obviously couldn't hear it. So, hey, yeah, actually, I got something a little stronger than beer going on tonight. So that may have been it, Justin. All right, so. Again, we had the storm. We had the tropical storm come through. I guess it was Nicole, hit on the East Coast, came up through the West Coast. We were just talking about the what did you call it again, Pat? The penetration,
Evacuation.
evacuation and
There'll be an
penetration.
evacuation zone where the fish, and then there'll be a penetration zone where the fish come back to. But all the fish will have been forced to go out a certain distance off, and they will only have come back and saturated another saturation zone. You can have another zone if you want.
Right.
And they'll come back, and once you find those fish, they're all going to be mixed in together.
Yeah.
The difference is normally this time of year we have had some cooler weather, which separates the non-keepers from the keepers, or the slots from the non-slots, as you youngsters like to say.
So.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. And so once you find that penetration zone, then you got to find the bait that weeds out the smaller fish. So you got to pick up or choose up and use a larger bait. Maybe change colors.
Yeah.
We have sound now.
I did notice though that after the water left for Ian for a few days, the fishing was really good when that water came back in. It was phenomenal. I anticipate
for a little bit.
I would anticipate being the same. The only issue that we've got is we've got a hard cold front coming, on Sunday, which is gonna, that high pressure is gonna come in behind it, so it could shut it down for a few days and take those fish, because it's gonna cool off significantly.
Yeah,
but I think right back up.
I think inland,
cold.
I think inland it's supposed to be maybe in the 30s Monday morning or something like that.
The fish won't know that though.
Yeah.
One day drop won't do it to them.
So you don't think it'll have much of an effect on them, maybe a day or so?
You have to have 3 days of cold to really kick them in the head.
Yeah.
Which we'll have. Not that cold, but we'll have.
Yeah. So you think 3 days of cold to change them off the pattern from what you've been fishing?
Just drops in metabolism.
Yeah.
They're not going to necessarily move. They're just not going to feed. They're just going to wave at your bait as it goes by.
Well, there will be one day in which they wave at your bait. At least one day, I think, where they wave at your bait when it goes by.
Yeah.
Sunday or Monday. Yeah. Depending on when that front comes through.
Should be good Wednesday when we go fish.
But tomorrow should be. I mean, that day before that front comes, it is usually a pretty good bite. So I think tomorrow might be a good little trout bite tomorrow. We got a southwest wind out of up to 15 though, so it could be a little sporty. All right, so it is November. It is November 11th. It is Veterans Day. Thank you to all those veterans out there. Also want to just mention real quick before we kind of get into it that one of our other sponsors, Keaton Beach Moms, Jared and Monica, they had their baby. So we want to say congratulations to them. So we'll touch on that. So, all right, let's just give people a rundown.
What? Boy named Hank. Oh.
As far as kind of what you've been seeing up to today. So basically what you've been seeing as far as redfish and trout up until basically the tropical storm Nicole. So Pat, kind of I guess you can start us off, Pat, down there at the end. You want to start us off as kind of what you've been seeing as far as just general trends.
What I've been seeing is blowing 20, 25 knots. That's what I've been seeing. White caps.
Even before Nicole?
Yeah, we fished. What day did I fish? What day did I see? What I pulled?
Monday.
I fished
Tuesday?
Monday. Yeah, I fished Monday, Tuesday. Monday we didn't have so much wind. We limited out. Had a decent group of guys fishing, and we caught some good fish. But the WIND was neutralizing the breeze. I mean, the northeast was neutralizing the incoming tide and blocking that current, so we were crabbing. So we've had that as a trend for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, that east wind has been pretty steady.
That's been tough. And then so it was actually better Tuesday when it blew harder because we got more drift. We were getting a natural drift out of it, and the larger fish liked us. I threw back 2 over slots Tuesday, and caught more fish on artificial because when it's blowing like that, they can't tell what it is, and your reaction strikes are a lot better.
Yeah.
So we were all live on Monday. Evan has his hand up.
Can I ask a question for Pat here?
Sure, go ahead.
What do you think it is when you have the tide and the wind working against each other for the crowd watching at home?
All right, let me repeat this. So Evan is off screen. I don't know if you can hear him now. Hit the button for me, Evan. The plus minus
Beep.
button. Evan said, "What do you think the wind it is with the tide going against the wind?
That hurts the bite. Is it bait?
That hurts the bite."
Is it, just fish?
It's oxygen, pure and simple. This fish is waiting. The reason our better bites are on the moon tides and are on the tides when we have it over 2.5 foot of range is oxygen. The fish don't really know that the moon's there. I mean, people are so silly to say, "Oh, it's a full moon or it's a new moon. The fish won't be biting. They'll be eating at night." Bull snot. They don't care about the moon. They can't see the moon, and they don't know what the moon is. What they know is oxygen. So when you have the northeaster pushing back, our tide always comes in from the same direction. What is that? Southwest, correct. And so when you have a northeast pushing directly against the southwest, the boat, you don't get a drift, and that tells you that the water's not moving, and that tells you these fish are not getting oxygen. It's just like that wide receiver for any NFL team. If he blitzes down 70 yards down and does it 2 plays, they pull him out, and he goes over there and he gets on that oxygen so he can get back out there and do it again. He can't run 70 yards every play for 8, 9, 10 plays in a row. And these fish, these trout, you have to consider that if they expend the energy to get a bait, then they're going to have to get a return, and they have an automatic switch that shuts them down if they're not getting it. You can go out there and catch short fish, little fish, because they're not. It's not so much of a instinct with them. But the bigger the trout, the more he will not move.
So you like the wind and the tide in the same direction?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I can get a south prescription here, south, southwest, east, southwest, any of that, you're going to double my production and split half the time, Kenny? It'll take you half as long or a third as long to catch them.
Even though you don't. So you think it's more about the oxygen in the water, even though you're covering more water because you got the wind and the tide behind you.
Oh, absolutely.
But so you think that has something to do with it too?
Yeah, you can crank up and move 50 times. You still can't get the slot fish to feed.
Right,
You can get,
I got you.
When there's no there's no oxygen movement in the water.
Sure. So just kind of I got another
Does that
question.
answer your question?
Yeah, no, for sure. Does that answer your question, Evan? You good? Yeah.
Right.
When they can have the tide and the wind moving against each other.
Right.
You're not doing a straight drift. You're more drifting forward. Or
Yeah. I hate
Or
that
not
kind
at
of a
all.
drift. Or not at all. Yeah.
Well, you can look at your GPS. You can look at your GPS and see
How fast you're moving compared
that you're
to
not moving.
Yeah.
And when you're going
yeah.
sideways, you can eat a sandwich.
Let me ask you this. So something I noticed here the last couple of weeks, and this may be just more generalized to where I've been fishing, but I've noticed that some of the bigger fish that I've been catching have coming off a structure.
Yes.
Have you noticed that? Have either of y'all noticed that? As far as trout goes, I'm speaking specifically about trout.
Yep.
Okay. What about you, Pat? Have you noticed that at all?
No, I hadn't seen that at
Okay.
all.
Well, we're also typically targeting other species on that structure.
Yeah.
The bigger trout that I heard being caught were around mullet, and if those mullet were in there around some
that makes sense too.
some bars,
that's
maybe,
very true. Yeah.
But they've been riding riding around with the bikers, you
Yeah.
know, and the mullet.
And the structure I'm speaking of specifically was not nearshore structure. It was a little bit off, like offshore. It was not right up on the shoreline. It was a little bit out. So
Well, you haven't been able to get anywhere near the shoreline for us
Yeah.
here the last couple of weeks.
So that's kind of what I was speaking to on that. I mean, is that what you noticed too, Kenny?
Absolutely.
Yeah, kind of. So
You had that 26 out there. You in 7 feet of water. There wasn't any structure out there, was it? About 2 weeks ago when we
No,
Yeah.
no
Had
no
a-
structure.
Tell them about that. You caught a 26, and then you turned around and went to the hill and caught a 25.
Yep, 26 and a 27.
Right. And,
Yep.
and they were about
We-
an hour apart.
Yeah, we
and
caught
they
the 26. We were probably 2 miles out from the shoreline,
Right.
and then went in on the shoreline and caught a 27.
Right.
Yeah.
So that shows you how spread up. And that was after Ian.
Yeah,
That
and-
shows you how spread out some of these.
and let me tell you this too. So I was catching some trout out, off where in the general, 4 to 5 feet range over grass. And then, of course, when the tide came in, I was fishing redfish up close, and I hit this one particular creek mouth, and there was trout stacked up in this particular creek mouth, and that wasn't a trend. I had fished 50 other creek mouths, but this one particular one had trout in it, and they were keepers too. Like every single fish we caught was keepers out there.
We did the same
So-
thing Sunday. Saturday, I caught all the trout out deeper in that 4.5, 5 feet range
Right.
out.
Right.
And then moved in, try for
Redfish, yeah.
because the trout bite it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And we moved in red fishing, and we were one shy of a limit on trout, but that's because we had to run because of a storm, try to split a gap.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Just the fact that those fish were, I don't know what it was, but this one particular creek mouth had a bunch of trout in it, and we'd been catching redfish all around it, but
Were there mullet there?
not really. I didn't even see any signs of mullet.
Watercolor any different?
Not really. I mean,
Bait
a
present?
little darker. Well, water in this area was probably a little more muddy and stirred up than other areas that I
Okay.
was
More
fishing.
oxygen.
I don't know.
It was stirred up, there's more oxygen.
I was trying to put the pieces in my in my head together as to why those fish were in that one particular spot, and I mean, other than
Left or right side of the creek mouth?
in the middle,
What was the tide doing?
it was going out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was going out, so it was a classic feeding situation as to why they would be where they were. But it was just seemed like it was early for that type of scenario as far
Yeah,
as
that's usually
water.
a December winter.
Right, exactly,
December
exactly.
feed.
So I think there's some fish that are still a little bit kind of
They're all over the place.
confused. I guess is
No
where I'm
audio
getting at.
again.
Oh, he might be. Maybe he started from the beginning. I don't know. We should have audio. We should be good on audio.
Okay,
I got audio right there.
gotcha.
All right. So, you got anything to add as far as trout go?
Yeah, I mean, they're just all over the place.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and one thing, have you thrown much topwater?
It's been hit or miss.
Yeah, it hasn't been.
It hasn't been
good.
as consistent.
No.
It's
no.
been like you'll go out one day and you'll get and I've noticed it's better when the wind's blowing.
Yes.
When the wind's blowing, the top water bite's better.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
that would be the case.
Catching reds on them as far as trout. Is
Yeah,
just,
the trout's bite.
They're not eating.
And I noticed too, to get the reds fish to hit the top water, there's got to be a bunch of them around.
Yeah.
They've got to be in a competitive feeding situation.
And the only way I've been getting the redfish to hit them is just working it fast.
Yeah.
Like really fast.
Yeah. So we got some people in here tonight. Let me just real quick touch on these guys that are here. We appreciate everybody showing up on a Friday night. This was kind of like a last minute deal. Kenny and I, the first of the month came, and Kenny and I have been so busy. This was the first chance we get together. But we want to just thank everybody for coming in. Ken Holmes, appreciate you coming in. Justin Anderson, dude, we need to get together here soon. Lance Stapleton, thank you for coming in. Jason, what's up from Cherry Lake, man? Matt Clayton, what's the biggest fish you ever caught on a Zapco? Matt's an old high school buddy of mine. I haven't seen Matt in probably 20 years. But, Matt, I don't know that I've ever fished with a Zepco 33. Maybe a bass back when we used to bass fish back in high school.
Mudfish.
Maybe one of those bass. Yeah, one of those mudfish.
I caught a 9-pound red on a 404 that the anti reverse was broken. I had to let go of the handle when I was 9 years old.
When he so in order to,
standing on a bar in St. Augustine.
that's awesome.
First redfish I ever caught.
That's awesome. But yeah, so appreciate everybody showing up tonight. So that's trout. I guess to maybe summarize that, what are you saying is the max depth you're finding trout in right now, Pat?
Maximum?
Max depth. Max depth.
Best depth. Best depth?
Max depth. In other words, like if somebody was going to start somewhere, what would you tell them the deepest place the depth to start at, and then work in from there.
The deepest place, but that's all right. I don't know, 4.5, 4 something.
I know it depends on the tide, but that's the question we always get.
4 question mark.
Yeah.
4.
Okay, so around maybe a mean 4.
No, 3.5's my magic number, but
Okay.
4 anything.
As far as
if I get to 5 feet, I'm not catching fish.
Yeah, I got you. So
now see, his 4 would be 5 in my boat.
Okay.
4.5.
Yeah, but that's all relative. Everybody's transducer. They know where their transducer's under. I don't have mine set at this. I haven't. I don't know anybody that knows that feature on their machine and has actually used it to reset it so that it's exactly what the depth is.
I do. I do.
You reset yours?
I do.
See, mine won't read over grass. My when it's thick grass, mine doesn't read. So
it reads to the grass.
I don't get it. I have to eyeball it. If I got sandy bottom, it'll read. If I got rocky bottom, it'll read. But when it gets to that thick grass, it won't read. I don't know. But
if you jumped overboard, it would be deeper. Trust me.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
grass and my transducer is probably a foot deep.
Yep.
So.
What's up, Johnny? Appreciate you showing up tonight, man. I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. So let's talk a little bit about redfish. Pat, you have had. I've noticed, man, that you have had a pretty good last month as far as redfish is concerned.
Yeah, I love October, and now we're into November, and November's the new October. So November is the time, and it really, it's more like September when you got 75 degrees. That's late September.
Yeah.
And we're running way, way hotter water than we're supposed to.
It is warmer. Yeah, we had that one cold spell, but then after that, it's been warm.
Came right back up.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've been doing is throwing plugs and catching the reds.
Yeah.
And I've had the right people at the right time to where I would repeat and do what I did, and I'd have some maybe, sitting on the fence people and teach them to throw the plug, and they really enjoyed it. But we hadn't caught all of them on it. We've caught some on bait, but when it got real cold, that cold snap is where I keyed in on that, and it's finally run its course. But I'm not catching them on that plug anymore, but I wasn't catching any reds the other day anywhere. And finally found one.
Yeah. They've been kind of concentrated in certain spots.
Absolutely.
It's like you'll go a certain area and you won't catch one, and then all of a sudden you'll catch one and you'll catch a bunch. So if you
said you were catching 40 a day.
Yeah. It's been
that's concentrated.
Yeah, they're definitely really concentrated with very few fish in between. Is that kind of what you're noticing?
I mean, I'm just hitting all the spots where I know they're concentrated.
Right.
They've been there for a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'll fish little stretches in between those areas where I know they're concentrated, and you pick up 1 or 2, 3 maybe between those
but not stacked.
But not stacked like they are.
Yeah. I mean,
it's slot fish or over slot.
They're mostly slot fish.
All slot
fish. Finding very few over slot fish. Occasionally here and there.
I've been seeing some, but they're still out deep.
Yeah. Mostly slot fish between 20 and 26, 27 inches mostly, but a bunch in that 20 to 24 inch range.
In fact, when I caught that 46, what was that, 2 weeks ago? 2.5 weeks? No, almost 3.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago, I caught a 46 inch, and it was a school of 100 to 200 fish, and we were in 5.5 feet of water.
Yeah. I've run over those. Not saying that very school, but I've been running from one spot to the next and look down and see 200 redfish. Oh man, I just ran over 200 redfish.
We were trout fishing. I seen the water boiling with reds, and I seen that big one. I just grabbed a Mirrodine, just what I had in the rack, and put it on his nose.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a big fish. We ran into school last week, but they were right up on the shore.
Yeah,
no big fish in them, but you could.
Oh, I've been in a lot of schools up close. I mean, that's what I'm targeting. I mean, but they're all kind of lower to mid slot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it's like you said, and then as far as baits that we've been using. I mean, Kenny and I both been just hammering them with spoons.
Oh yeah.
Been catching some on plugs, like Pat was saying. I can't remember what dadgum mirror lure it is. It's the Catch. It's a Catch 2000, but it's the one that Wilson's has. I don't know. Have you talked to Sandra about this particular bait? She's got one that she custom orders from Mirrorlure.
I can't remember which one.
I was fishing with it about 15 years before she custom ordered it.
Yeah,
I call it
What do you call it?
Mustard and ketchup, but I
yeah,
call it candy corn.
Yeah, it's essentially what color it is.
That's what it. I think that's what it is.
I had some that I found at a show, and I talked to Eric, and he said I don't make them anymore. And I found them, and I think I was in Orlando at the Florida Sportsman Show, and I found them at a booth, and we kill fish on them.
Yeah, but all the redfish that we were catching were coming on that mirror lure.
It'll be another month before I pull out my catches.
But I had some. I had
longer.
Well, I mean, we had gotten tired of catching some on spoons, so we just wanted to throw something else. Yeah, try something different.
Which I've been throwing Myrdines and having success.
So I mean,
but by far the gold spoon.
The gold and copper. Yeah. Gold and copper and white. Any of those white aqua dream, the pinfish or the bait fish or just the plain white one's been working well too. So any of those, but it seems like the gold and copper has been the best color here lately.
Yep.
So if you're just going out to strictly target redfish, I don't know that I would throw anything else other than a spoon.
Yeah, and I mean this past weekend I didn't spend as much time red fishing because I had people just blowing between me and the shoreline, airboats sitting down on top of the fish, literally on top of the school of fish. And I mean, it was
Yep.
Yeah, it's that time of year.
Yep. All right, so let's talk a little bit of projection as far as now we're moving. We're maybe a third of the way through November, but we're moving into late November and early December. So what patterns do you see changing as we go into December? And I'm going to start with you, Pat. What patterns will you kind of change up as you move from November into early December? Will you do anything different, or will you keep it kind of pretty steady?
Well, I write for 2 different print magazines, and you write your fishing reports on your averages, and you expect the water to start in November in, say, upper 60s or around 70, and then go to the lower 50s, and we're not going to see that. We're going to be from mid 70s to upper 70s so far, and now we're almost to the middle of the month. So what we're looking for is temperature, not the date, because fish don't have calendars.
Right.
So we're looking for your trend change is below 60. When you start dropping down and having to
wait
till the afternoon to get 65 and get a bite that lasts, this just gangbusters. It's it's every cast, no matter where you are.
Right.
Bam, 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 bam. That's going to happen when the water's right below 60 or right at 60 in the mornings, and doesn't break that 65 or 64 mark till about 2-3 o'clock. And then you better be in the right place because it's going to be on.
Yep.
And that's when you really get to have fun with plugs and plastic both, but plugs with me because you can eliminate the one you bought that you thought looked so good, it was so great.
Right.
New plugs. Right. That's when you change, is when you're catching a fish every cast. And I like to play a game of how many lures can you throw one time, catch a fish on change before you miss on a cast. And that's the kind of thing that's fun to me. Throwing the Berkeley Gulp under a Cajun Thunder 350 times and catching 300 little short trout, to me, it's not fun.
No thanks.
So it's after, will he come to the surface first?
Right.
If he won't, will he hit will he hit a sinking? Yeah. Will he hit a jerk bait, a lip jerk bait? Will he hit the plastic?
Yeah. That's a really cool thing to do whenever you get when you get on a good bite. It's hard to just go away from what you've been catching them on.
That's right.
But that's a great time to experiment, to see, okay, we know they're hitting this. Let's see what else we can catch them on. And then
you'll never see me throw 3 times with the same thing. If I catch 2 fish on 2 casts, I'm changing, because that's the only way to learn anything.
That's exactly right.
And for people that don't know how to fish something like a Myrdine or a Catch, pull it out when the trout are hitting your soft plastics every cast, and see if you can get him to hit it.
Yep.
And you can learn or teach yourself without knowing what you're doing. You can discover what works when the bite is on like that. But you have to have the discipline to put down the damn spoon or whatever it is you're catching a fish on every cast.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, the hot bites are when you learn. You learn what, and then also too, I mean, the dead bites too can be what you learn, because you might be not catching anything on one thing, and then all of a sudden you switch to something else.
Or just switch technique on what you're using.
But the reason you're more likely to switch on a dead bite because that's the instinctive thing to do. Okay, I'm not getting any bites on this. I got to switch until I get bites.
That's like changing the channel on the TV and the TV's off.
Right.
What are you doing?
Right, exactly.
Didn't accomplish anything.
But then when you do get on that good bite and then you're catching them on one thing, like you said, if you switch until you don't get bites, it's the opposite.
It's the only way to graduate from gulps.
Right.
Gulp kindergarten.
I'm going to use that gulp kindergarten. I like that. That's great.
I call it the Hey Hira principle, and no dig against people in Hey Hira. I know some great.
You Hey Hira people.
Hey Hira is just a perfect name. The sound of it just tickles me every time I say it. So I call it the Hey Hira principle. It's a Berkeley gulp under a cork, and you throw it out there and you work it just as fast as you did in July and December, and you come back and you say, we didn't catch anything. And I go, were you throwing gulp? And they say, yep. I said, well, I can't understand it. Yeah. And that's my way of not saying, you got to put it down.
Yep.
And but if, it's like the gold redfin. The gold redfin now is the new Berkeley gulp. Once it gets cold, that's all people want to throw, and they caught a limit last November or when they were 12, and now they're 35, and they're still throwing a gold redfin.
You know what I use gulp for? Catching pinfish.
Well,
I use gulp to catch pinfish.
The only time I will use them is in the summertime when things get tough. I pull everything out.
Yeah, I get that. But
I'm not ditzing gulp. I'm ditzing trying to make fish hit it when they won't.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm saying don't continue to do what you did in June and July and August in the middle of the winter. Yeah. But the other thing is, if you are catching a fish, graduate, put it down, and try to get in the first grade. And then when you make it out of the first grade, go to the second, third, and then you'll be a better fisherman on the days that they're in June and July when they're not hitting your gulp.
Yeah.
But if you don't change it up and you just buy a bigger bottle of gulp, a bigger jar of gulp, I mean, it's fine, but you're killing a lot of little fish unnecessarily when you could probably say, look at here, I can throw this whatever plug or whatever plastic.
Sure.
But the main thing, and back to answer your question, is you have to know which lures are designed to fish in water less than 60, and those are the suspending bait, Miridine, what does Rapala call theirs? Subwalk. Yeah. The Subwalk or Sub-Wrap or whatever.
Catch 2000.
The Catch 2000s, and then the Hover Shed, I think isn't that the copy of the Miridine by...
Mm-hmm. And then the
Academy Hover Shed. All these suspending baits are designed for waters in the 50-degree temperature range. And if you buy some basic colors in them, once you're getting your butt handed to you with your gulp, try that lure. Yeah. Or if you get into this November, December, I call it Thanksgiving to Christmas bite. If you get into the holiday cheer, put those lures on and learn to fish them, and you won't throw a redfin again.
Or book a trip, and we'll teach you how to fish them.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So, Kenny, I'm gonna ask you the same question. So, as we get into late November, how are you adapting to this time of year as that water temperature cools?
Well, obviously, like I said, changing up baits. If I'm live bait fishing, I'm transitioning from, as the pinfish starts to leave, more shrimp if I'm live baiting. A lot of soft plastics, the saltwater assassin shads, going a little lighter weight or no weight at all, depending on how cold it is. Doesn't look like it's going to get very cold, so probably a 1/8 twist lock hook, on a 5-inch jerk shad. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then, I do throw a lot of plugs. One of my favorite plugs right now for maybe a little bit cooler as we get further in the month would be the Unfair Greenie. I threw that a lot last year. And
I remember.
Yep. Man, that thing killed the trout. It was good.
What's the name of the profile?
Greenie. It looks like a greenback.
Oh, Greenie.
Yep,
okay,
looks just like a greenback.
All right, and what colors were your patterns? What patterns?
I don't remember what color. It was a silver.
That the I don't know what one we were throwing. What was the gold one that we were throwing?
That was the arrowhead.
The arrowhead, yeah.
Is that a suspending bait, Kenny?
It is, but it's a little faster sinking I mean, it is a suspending, but
it's a hybrid, in other words.
Yeah, it's more of a hybrid.
It's faster than the catch and the.
Oh yeah, it's a lot faster than the catch. Significantly faster.
Is
than
it as heavy as a 52, 51? Mirror lure?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a sinking lure then. It's not a.
It is a suspending, but its rate of descent before it suspends is faster.
Okay.
So it's a slow sinking.
It's a little faster sinking than a Mirrodine.
Okay. But now let me close the myth. There's no such thing as a lure that has a rate and then it changes. So it's either a sinker or it's a suspending lure.
No, I mean because it goes to a depth and it holds.
So it sinks to a certain.
I'm going to need to see that. I'm not arguing with you. I believe you because I know you're not telling a lie.
Right.
But I have never seen.
When I say hold is when you're when you work it. Like you work a Mirrodine, it comes up. And it'll go back down a little and come up and go back down. With the hooks I use.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that.
You modified that. Okay. Because everybody else is now everybody at home is going, mine go down and then I work them up. So they don't.
Actually, when the winter time when I swap the hooks, they do sink, and as I'm working it comes up.
Yeah.
And it come down. It almost works like a redfin. Anyways, that's a little different.
Hard jerkbait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Getting a little too sophisticated.
But these, even a Mirrodine will sink if you let it sit there. It'll sink.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is the greenie sinks a little bit faster as it sinks.
Yeah, I got you.
It's a hybrid then. It's crossed between a sinker and a suspender.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Now, as it gets cooler, like you were talking about the Arrowhead, I mean that's.
Yeah, that was a good bait last year.
Yeah,
that was a good bait
last year.
Yeah, I think we started fishing that last year, right?
Yeah.
That Arrowhead. I'll say.
What is the distinction between the greenie and the Arrowhead?
It's a little heavier, right? It sinks a little faster.
The Arrowhead?
Yeah.
I think it's slower.
Is it slower?
It's slower.
Okay.
It's very slow, actually. It's about the rate of a Catch 2000, but it's a different profile.
Yeah. If we had Michael Ammon on here, he would be able to tell you in a heartbeat what the difference is.
Yeah. Well, the greenie the greenie looks like a greenback the way it comes down to a real narrow at the bottom, where the Arrowhead has that more of the smaller Mirrodine style.
Yeah. So, and then I'll say too, as we get to the end of November and December, I like to start throwing those the Little Johns.
I'm actually been throwing them now.
I've been throwing them some too, kind of weightless. But I like fishing them under a jig head as we get into.
I've been throwing them under jig head now, and it's been work, especially redfish.
Yeah, it's a great bait for redfish, and then when those trout start to move into it,
yeah, we've been catching a lot of trout on them. Watermelon red has been the color.
Yep. Little Johns, and then as we get kind of later in December, it gets to be Ned rig season, which is one of my favorites.
I've been throwing.
Have you been
the 3-inch?
I've been. Yeah, we've caught a few fish on those as well. So. But it really fires off, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
You know what, Jay now answered the same question you gave both of us.
Well, that's what I just did. So like I said, so I like to start as we get into late November, early December, especially mid-December, which we can talk more about that next month. But mirror lure, the Little Johns and the watermelon color is good. The pink is good. And then I like to start throwing Z-Man, the Ned rigs, the TRDs. What's the one that's got the four little things that come off the back of it? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know exactly.
I cannot remember the name of it. And then the slim swims, the 2.5-inch slim swims and the 3-inch.
I've been throwing the 3-inch slim swims now.
those are really good as we get into into November, into December.
And who builds the swim?
That's Z-Man. Z-Man does. Okay. Yeah, and then you fish it on a little mushroom head.
1/5 ounce. Yeah,
1/5 or 1/6. I like 1/5 or 1/6, depending on current wind conditions. But I don't usually go over that 1/6 ounce, and you can fish them as light as a 1/10 ounce. But usually it's got to be pretty good conditions to fish that one.
I fish those in late January, early February.
Right, and that's kind of more of a true wintertime bait as we get into the cold stuff in wintertime.
I can't think of the name. That's gonna drive me insane now.
The TRD is the TRD shrooms. It's not the TRD shrooms, is it?
No.
I can't remember the name of that. But anyway, those all work good as we get into the wintertime. And then, like you were saying, Pat, with these warmer water temperatures, shoot, I mean, top water might even continue working. I had one of my best top water days for trout in mid-December last year. So I mean, that's definitely an option as we go, through into November and December. Just depends. It's that one right there. Go scroll down. It's that one, whatever that one is.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Ticklers. The ticklers. Yeah, TRD ticklers. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that one works really good. I like the ticklers too because it's got those 4 little legs that come off the back, and you can squeeze some ProCure into those little legs, and that really helps.
Especially the ticklers are good when it gets really cold because you're almost just letting it sit there and letting the current let the and we can talk again. We can talk more about that as it gets into colder months, but that's kind of where I'm.
How do you stay awake when that's going on?
You're bouncing it, hey,
because it's nonstop action.
Yeah, it is literally nonstop action.
You said you let it sit there and wave at the fish with
your
legs.
Well, pretty much when you're using that, it's gonna be more creek fishing, and you pitch it up there like along the bank, and it'll literally roll down the hill of the bank. You really don't even have to work it. It'll just the current will make it kind of.
So it's ducks in a barrel, and there's no you're
pretty
not
much
really involved.
Pretty much.
So, Pat, to be more specific, so you make your cast and you bounce it maybe once, twice, and then you'll let it sit for 3 to 7 seconds, whatever.
Because the trout's metabolism is so cold, he can't get over there.
Right.
He's
so
he's on a walker.
And he's looking at it, and then and then you bounce it, and then a lot of times they'll pick it up.
You'll literally feel it roll on the bottom too.
And a lot of times they'll pick it up either off the bottom or they'll hit it when it's fallen. And that's kind of the way you work that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're not just casting it out there and letting it sit like you're shrimping fishing like you're shrimping a hole.
I didn't mean it like that. I mean as far as you're barely working the thing.
Right. Yeah, you're not shrimping a hole as Evan likes to call it. So that's kind of like, I guess that would be how we transition as we get from the end of November and into December. So I guess that's a good way to kind of wrap that up. So, Pat, I'm gonna start with you. Last question, and then guys, if you've got any questions for us, you've got a lot of wealth and knowledge sitting right down here at the end of the table. So I would encourage you to get some questions in as we go towards the end of the show, because
you got some good knowledge over here.
You got a lot. You got a couple more years of experience down there. So.
He just call you old?
I'm not calling him old. I'm calling him seasoned. He's seasoned.
Old. That's what I heard. Old.
Nice
like
and
a dusty
seasoned.
old bottle of wine you find in the back of the.
So if you guys got your questions, there's like 30 people in here, so I know you guys got some questions for us. Whether it's from trout, redfish, sight fishing. We haven't even touched on sight fishing this. But yeah, this is. If you got any questions, we're gonna get to those.
So I got an interesting thing about the fly. Had a gentleman on the boat last week fly fishing. And he wanted a trout on fly. He caught his first red on fly with me last year. Anyways, his daughter wanted to catch redfish. Well, we got into a spot on some structure like we were talking about, and there was mullet everywhere, redfish. I mean, you just see tons of redfish. But he wanted a trout, and I look over, and it was like the trout were balled up. He threw a shrimp fly, nothing. Threw a bigger fly, like a fish fly, nothing. Tied on a blue crab fly, and the trout wrecked it.
Interesting.
So I was talking to Pat about it. I said, the only thing I could think of is those mullet were in there. And, I mean, we had a kingfish beside the boat at that spot. We actually had a bonefish on, lost it there. Spanish mackerel, redfish, trout, all in this spot, bluefish. I was telling Pat the only thing I could think, there was so many mullet that they were just kicking up that bottom, and them trout were just glued in on them crabs.
Yeah, that definitely could be a possibility for sure. Yeah.
Let's go back to something Kenny said. Did y'all catch the anomaly in his sentence.
Yeah, the bonefish.
A bonefish.
I know.
We're going to have to go back and talk about the bonefish.
Yeah,
now.
well, there was 2 that was caught out of Steinhatchee last month. Did you see that?
But I didn't know Kenny had hung.
Yeah, I didn't know Kenny had, and I seen one caught out of St. Mark's like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, Jim Henshaw. Yeah.
And those we're attributing to Ian.
Yeah, that's got to be Ian as being redistributing some of the.
Yeah.
So that just tells you there is something to the redistribution of fish after a major storm like that. So, we've talked about snook, on this show before as to how we're starting to get a snook population. So there's got to be some play in that as well,
Oh, yeah.
But the fact that we've got 5 or 6 instances of bonefish being caught in the last month.
Yeah, I mean, we had it right there at the boat and lost it. It sucked.
That would have been incredible.
How big was it?
2-3 pounds.
Inches.
Yeah.
Inches. Yeah, probably 2-3.
I think it's like a 22-inch bonefish, 22 something like that.
I mean, I honestly thought it was a big trout at first because we were in there with the trout. I mean,
but it didn't smoke it. It didn't just smoke him when it hit.
You had to be fishing a shrimp or something like that, weren't you?
We were fishing the 3-inch Ned rig.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean it really wasn't sure what it was. The only thing I could think would have been a trout, and then I seen the flashes that got to the boat, and first thing I thought was mackerel, just because I seen a flash or bluefish, and then we got it up close, about to net it, and I'm like, holy crap, that's a bonefish.
Yeah,
I'll be damned. That's amazing.
It is amazing. I was going to ask you guys. Oh, okay. So,
everything was in there. Like I said, we had a kingfish. It cut off. It cut off at the boat. Yeah. I mean, I only had 20-pound fluoro.
Do you have a preacher on the boat or something?
No.
Are you sure?
We just got into a bunch of mullet. I mean, the mullet was so thick. I mean, I wish I had a snatch hook on the boat, to be honest with you. The mullet were thick.
Johnny, but that kind of, he was saying, Kenny was saying that a blue crab fly, but typically for it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm shallow water fishing, we've got so much grass here, it's got to be a light fly. And then if I'm creek fishing or something like that, I usually throw like a larger bait fish pattern that's got some weight to it that sinks with some medium lead eyes or even large lead eyes, something like that. So
he threw some of those,
like a clouser or something like that.
Clouser, crap, drawing a blank now.
There's a fly I'll have to show you that works really well in the wintertime. So I'm gonna keep it a secret for now. But all right, so
we did throw some gurglers.
Yeah, we caught a really nice redfish on a gurgler the other day. Pat, what's your favorite thing to do in November? Favorite thing? If you were fishing by yourself and you didn't have to worry about clients, what's your favorite thing to do?
Unweighted 5-inch assassin.
Okay,
yes. By far.
Okay,
because you get to feel the kick and then the load up.
Yeah.
You get to feel that. Yeah. When he pops it with his teeth. And,
sure.
And I'm an old school bass fisherman from years back and spent hundreds of thousands of hours bass fishing, and I loved that feeling that fish hit that worm. I mean, if it's not top water, the top water bite just isn't like it used to be. We don't have enough bait to turn it on to where it's going to last all day or 4 or 5 hours. You got 30 minutes early and late, and to me, that's too much sugar for a dime. So I'd say the soft plastic because it can literally be a fish every cast for 2 or 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's the duration of that bite that is fun because you can teach people. I had 2 different clients that had been fishing, one of them 18 years, one of them 12 years, had never put the cork down. And I when I caught like 8 or 9 in a row, they said, let me try that, and I said, well, no, you can't do it. And so you use reverse psychology on them, and the next thing you know, they want to come back in November and December, and they don't want to throw a cork.
Yeah,
and that's really what I love to see is when someone masters it in front of you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm gonna be throwing a lot of those, especially watermelon slice.
The didapper.
That and the 5-inch, the 5-inch.
Right.
That didapper I liked a lot in the spring. I haven't thrown it much lately. I probably need to.
I thought you were throwing it last year when it was cold.
I did some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that your favorite thing to do in November? What's your favorite thing to do in November, Kenny? Whether you're guiding or fishing by yourself?
Me personally, I'm probably going to be throwing a Mirrodine.
Okay.
Or a greenie. If I'm trout fishing, the greenie, Mirrodine, and that arrowhead.
Oh, so I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm going to ask you the same question here in just a second. So, Pat, if you were going out in November and you wanted to target specifically overslot trout, big trout, would you change anything about the way that you fish or try a different tactic? Or what would you do if you were just trying to focus on big gator trout?
In the upcoming couple of months?
Yeah.
I'd change, instead of fishing the incoming tide, I'd fish the
outgoing.
The outgoing. I might fish the last hour of the incoming, and
okay.
I'd fish 2 hours of flop, and then I'd go home.
Okay.
I mean that.
What do you think that just triggers those bigger fish to feed?
Transition
area. Can I tell you why?
Yeah, go ahead.
When it gets cold, when it breaks 60, and you're sitting all day waiting on it. If you have the afternoon high, say, from 12 to 2, when that water starts back out, then the sun has warmed that water. Mm-hmm. And it's 4 and 5 degrees warmer than what these fish are sitting in, and they're out there in 3 feet.
Right.
When that water gets 1.5 feet, 2 foot deep, it's on. Now, Kenny knows this better than me because his boat's skinnier, and he can actually get in there and fish it when it's 1 foot, and that's when that warm water, when that 2 feet of water leaves, those fish, the big fish, which will not run a bait down, they will not jump a hard bait. They will hit a Mirrodine if you happen to throw it perfectly, but they're not going to move 6 feet, or sometimes they won't move 3 feet for it. So now this bait's coming right down Peachtree for them, and you can throw the plastic, and you can, and some plugs, I'm sure, but the plastic is just so much quicker. He's either there, he's not. Throw it, count to 20, reel it in, throw it again. 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 10. I make 10, 15, 20-second casts.
Yeah.
And the average angler will never do that because they're too smart. Oh, well, I catch fish. Sometimes I catch big fish right here by the boat.
Yeah,
and you lose 90% of them.
Yeah,
too.
because they're green.
All 3 of us.
Yeah, because they're green right there. You don't want them to hit close to the boat. No.
You don't want the
worst thing you can have is a fish of a lifetime to hit 5 feet from the boat.
Yeah. So don't fish there.
Yeah.
And I stress to people to fish 1/30 a cast. Whatever your length of cast is, divide it by 3 and fish the first third and reel it in. But it would be the change in how I fish. I would shorten it, and I would make 3 times the cast that the
power
fish person. Yeah. Well, I tournament fish some in bass fishing, and you can't make 2-minute cast, with a plastic worm or anything else.
Well, that goes back to how we're catching, 20, 30, 40, 50 redfish in a day is we're power fishing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and you're bouncing from spot to spot. I mean, you're not right. Spinning. You fish a spot, you catch fish after fish and fish. And my rule is, so when I'm power fishing, 5 casts without a bite. If I go 5 casts without a bite, I'm either moving or I'm changing casts.
Yeah.
And typically when I'm power fishing for redfish, and I've got them dialed in as to what they're feeding, 5 casts without a bite, I'm moving spots.
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a big move.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be a big move. It can be a 100-yard move sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's like, I went in Saturday. I went to where the reds have been stacked, and like I said, we had some pressure, more boats out on the water, and I said, guys, these fish aren't here. I mean, we threw the same thing we've been throwing, the gold spoons. I said, they're not here, and I noticed just beyond that there was a similar structure. And no boat traffic. I said, I bet you those fish are over there. Well, we went over there, and bam, it was one after another.
Yeah, and that brings up another good point, too, is, it's hard to know if you're fishing behind somebody, but if you pull up on one of your spots that you know is holding fish, and you're not catching fish, you're probably fishing behind somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they generally don't go far.
No.
If they've been in that same spot day after day after day for 3 weeks, they're going to be right there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good little point there.
Now, to answer the question, kind of what Pat was saying, one thing I'll do is it starts getting colder, for the big trout or just trout in general even, is, you kind of learn you're out there enough you can learn their transition.
You learn where those transition points are. Yep.
And the fish are here and they're going to here, and you get in between and you anchor up and you just have a steady flow of fish.
You know what I like to concentrate on in like late December as those fish are transitioning? I like that dark, muddy bottom with a little bit of oyster shell in the bottom mixed in with it. If you can find those areas right there kind of within 100 yards of the bank, that's a lot. They love to sit on that stuff. So I've got.
Do you know where you find that depository?
I mean, I don't know why particularly that depository is where it is, but
I can describe to you where it is. It's on the south side of your creek. It's on the right side, which is on the south side.
Okay.
Because that's the outgoing tide.
Right.
And that outgoing tide pushes the silt and the mud when it rains day in and day out for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and accumulates that mud on that side, the eddy side of the outgoing creek.
Yeah.
So they're always on. Think about them in your mind.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. No, okay. Yeah. No. So I will describe one of these situations to you. I'm not going to tell you exactly where it is. But there's a creek, right? So there's a creek kind of back in, and then there's a grass bank that comes out to a point, and it's in between that creek and that point where a lot of current flow you would get is one of these areas that I'm talking about.
Yep.
And it would be on the, I guess, the south or east.
All right, let me ask you.
An area where I fish.
Let me ask you a question. The tide is going out. You approach a creek. You want to catch a trout. Which side of the creek do you fish on? You want to catch a redfish. Which side of the creek do you fish on?
I mean, it kind of depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
Doesn't to me. A redfish is lazy. He is not going to get in the current. He's going to get on the left side. He's going to get on the side that does not have the push across the point or bar or mud or whatever the creek mouth is. He's not going to fight that current. He's going to be on the dead side of it.
Well, you call the dead side the front side?
No. Our creeks, our current goes out southwest.
Yeah, so what I'm referring to,
if you're facing any creek on our coast,
right,
and it's incoming, the current is harder currents on which side, Kenny? The right.
Yeah.
The right side.
South. Well, I didn't know if you were looking for left, right, south.
It doesn't matter because the current's coming in from the southwest. So if you're facing the current to the north, that's going to be coming on your right shoulder or on your right side.
Yeah.
And therefore that mud bank's going to accumulate in the eddy of that current, pushing all that mud and stuff out. That silt's going to settle on the eddy side of that current, but it's going to be more of it pushed. It's not going to be over there on the left.
Yeah.
There's nothing to deposit it
Right,
there.
right. So one thing I have noticed, especially as you know, you get to that time of year where the trout and redfish kind of overlap each other, as it gets colder and those fish are kind of in the same areas.
Right.
And where you get, if you got a creek, and typically with all of our creeks, there's some type of either crossbar that crosses the mouth of the creek, or there's a creek, or there's a bar that comes out from one side or the other. I will notice that the redfish tend to be like the up current side of the bar, and the trout will be on the down current side of the bar. In other words, the trout will be sitting behind the bar as the current flows over it, waiting to ambush stuff, whereas the redfish seem to like the up current side, sitting on the front side of it as the water. And I don't know if that's kind of what you're referencing.
Well, you got what we call a washout.
Right.
What does every afternoon hold on this coast for 9 months out of the year? What's the wind doing?
Oh, so you got an onshore wind.
Blowing onshore,
yeah, you got onshore wind. Yeah.
Southwest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's pushing and hitting the bank. So that wave washes, I think, puts a washout, puts a little trough on every bank that's on the left side.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And the reds sit in the
trough.
Yeah.
And face that current coming in or that wind, and they lay with their belly in that black grass.
Yeah.
Black grass
Yeah.
is. and they're going to sit in those troughs. So if you pull up on the bank, your red's on the left and your trout's on the right.
Yeah.
Yep.
90% of my time. Now, the reason I'm talking about the mouth is I don't go back in the street.
Yeah.
I got a Parker. I don't have
So-
that skinny boat.
Yeah.
So a prime example, last winter, I took some guys and, well, quite a few, but this one group in particular was asking me why this was. So I pull up to this spot, and we're casting in front of the boat, catching reds every cast. I said, all right. Tide got right. I said, all right, now we're going to catch trout. I said, okay, what are we going to do? I said, you're going to turn around and you're going to fish that side. And what it was, I was right there. The bar came in, it kind of came to a point while we were fishing this side, we were fishing in the trough. And when we turned around, all we were doing was fishing the other side of that point and catching trout.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're sitting there waiting to ambush.
And you wouldn't catch trout in that trough, but you wouldn't catch redfish over here. But we were literally anchored up in the same spot, just turning directions.
Yeah.
The second year I was here, second year I was 92. I had Joe Brenner, lives down at Keaton Beach, in the boat with me. And we were fishing Banana Bar, which is the hook-shaped bar right there off of Yates Creek, where we're looking right up Little Spring Creek. Little Spring Creek is just to the left of us. And every cast you made on this bar was a trout, and every cast you made on that bar, on this side of the bar, was a red. We caught 27 and 37.
Yeah.
And anchored in one place.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that's when I first learned that would happen. And then I had to analyze it for years to figure out why it was that way.
Yeah.
Hadn't done that again since on that particular bar either.
It's funny how that changes.
That bar gets a lot of pressure.
Man,
It didn't back in the 90s.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
no.
what I'm saying. Now it gets a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and it was also November, and it was freezing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we used to wear jackets, and I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt and a pair of shorts.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never forget my wife and I. We went out fishing. We were fishing the Banana Bar, and every cast, right in the middle of the banana, every cast was trout, throwing myrdine. And I watched this boat off in the distance, brand new 25-foot Ranger. I think it still had stickers on it. They couldn't stand it. They had to come. They come flying up in there, and the water was low.
Oh boy.
And they ran right over the barge. You hear it scraping the bottom. I'm telling you, this thing was brand new. And all I could do was laugh at them and went on my way.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. And it's funny over the years. It takes a long time. I mean, you wouldn't think that would make that much of a difference, but it does seem like as you go through and as you fish from year to year, you start to pick up on those little things like that, and that's truly what makes you a better angler. Yeah, when you can pick up on those trends like that.
And there's a lot of good fishermen that aren't guides that do good, and it's because they figure that stuff out.
Figure that stuff out.
The only reason, I say the only reason, we're just out there a lot more. We're trying a lot of different things. We're hitting a lot of different areas.
We fish when they're not biting, and we find ways to pull a rabbit out of the hat when they're not biting, and that's how you learn, is to really struggle. Those days we struggle.
Well, and also ask yourself why. When you run into stuff, it's like, okay, why? What is it about this area? Because I'm always doing that. I'm always asking myself, why am I catching fish here? What is it about this location? What is it about this particular bait this time of year? And you've just got to put all those pieces of the puzzle together to figure it out.
That's one good thing about the guides in our area, especially Keaton Beach. We all talk.
For sure.
And we all question one another, ask questions from one another, bounce things off of each other. And, just like the other day, I'm like, man, why are all these fish in this one spot that they shouldn't be there with these water temps?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. All right. So we've got some questions coming in. If you have any more questions, we're going to start to tackle them. So I've kind of got to some of them as we go, but again, we're going to get to some more. We talked about what flies are good for the same time frame, so I guess that's November. It just depends on what you're fishing over. I adapt my fly to the terrain that I'm fishing. If I can fish something off the bottom, I'm going to fish something off the bottom. If I'm fishing over grass, I got to fish something that stays out of the grass and doesn't get hung up, so it just kind of depends on that. Jason says... I'm sorry. Billy Roberts asks, and this you guys can speak to more of this because I don't hardly ever use pinfish traps. But he says, "What are your opinions on pinfish traps?"
It depends on what you're using the pinfish for. by far the best pinfish trap I've found for trout-sized pinfish is one that Jared sells. There is a downfall to it. It doesn't last. It needs, and I've talked to Jared.
So when you say not last, like a year, it lasts like a year or a few months?
No, a few months.
Coated? It's not coated?
Well, it is, but what they're using, the clips they're using to attach it, the galvanized wire, it lasts. It's the clips that they're using to attach it
are not stainless.
They're not stainless. They're not even galvanized, I don't think. I mean, they rust out.
I gotcha.
But it catches the perfect size pinfish. So I recommend going there, getting one of those. And I actually close. They got the slots. I close in the top and in the bottom, make it a little bit smaller. So you get those small pinfish. But it catches more pinfish of the perfect size than any trap I've ever used. Oh. Now, if you're wanting bigger pinfish for offshore fishing.
What color wire and what size mesh is it, Kenny, so they can go in there and know which one it is? Half by half?
Yeah, it's a half. Yeah,
half inch?
It's the smaller wire. Yeah, it's the half inch.
Okay. The holes, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it red or black? Do you know?
It's galvanized.
Oh, it's
okay.
galvanized. It's not coated.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
not coated.
It's not dipped in PVC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, I prefer the
so is that,
I prefer the galvanized over the PVC dipped. Yeah. It seems to catch more fish.
And that's for trout-sized pinfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Like I said, but you want when you buy it, and I know people doesn't like buying something they have to work on, but you will save yourself headache and money. Just go ahead and redo those clips, even if you just put zip ties on.
What about depth for those particular size pinfish?
Depends on time of year.
Like right now. Right up on the bank?
No,
3 to 4
about
feet.
3. Yeah.
Okay.
About 3 to 4.
All right.
Which is why your trout is where
Yeah,
they're at.
yeah. All right. Jason Johnson, appreciate you coming in, Jason.
One other thing,
go ahead.
if you want to know if you have the right pinfish trap, talk to Jared and tell him it's the ones that he orders out of Louisiana.
There you go. What
Jared at Beach Bums
at
down
Beach
the
Bums.
old
Keaton
corner
Beach
store
Bums.
at Keaton Beach.
Yeah.
He's the only place I know that sells that particular trap.
in our area, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've never seen them anywhere else.
Right.
I actually looked them up online, and I went to Jared. I said, "Look, this is the trap this is the design that I want. Can you get them?" And he said, "Well, where did you find that at?" And he ordered them for me.
Yeah. All right, guys, get those questions in. We're rolling through the questions. So I see there's several people in here. So please get those questions in. Unless you want us to wrap up, we're going to wrap up as soon as we get done answering questions. So if you got something that you want us to touch on, or something that we missed, or something that you just are curious about, get those questions in, and we'll get to them. Jason says, "What is the best way to catch blackfish and what depth?" I'm guessing he's talking black
sea bass.
Black sea bass, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people been catching black sea bass here.
Yeah, it's
lately.
funny. We I took some people out triple tail fishing, and we tried to catch them on fly, and they would follow it and didn't want to eat. So tried some jigs. I didn't have any bait on the boat, so I put a jig, sent it down to the bottom because we were on some structure, and the little girl was catching black sea bass, and then finally caught a lizard fish, and got what we needed there. But she was like, "This is so much fun." She literally caught 20 redfish that morning in 2.5 hours, and she was more excited catching those sea bass. It's great for
they
kids.
do hammer hard. They hit hard.
Yeah, that was 10, 12, 15 feet of water.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, have you been catching any black sea bass when you've been fishing for trout,
Oh, yeah.
Pat?
Oh, while I was fishing for trout, no, I target them in 10 to 12
About
feet
10
of
to 12
water.
feet, okay.
And
I've caught
I
a
bounce. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've caught a few black sea bass fishing some of those deeper depressions in some of our flats, like the little sandy depressions where you got a grass flat, and then there'll be like a sand hole that drops maybe a foot or 2 feet deeper than the surrounding flat. I've caught a few doing that, but they hadn't been keepers. I mean, they've been small.
We've caught some
Doing
keepers
that.
drifting trout
you?
fishing
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks.
I've seen some people posting pictures of sea bass mixed in with their trout, so I know they're there. This is another good question right here. It doesn't have.
Pat was going to say something.
Oh, go ahead, Pat.
The trick on the black sea bass is to use a heavier jig than you're fishing up there in 4 and 5 feet of water. I used to say add a 1/8 of an ounce for every 2 feet. So if you go from, say, throwing a 1/4 ounce jig in 4 to 6 feet of water, you should be using 3/8 or a half ounce jig. And if you throw a round head jig, it'll drop quicker and it'll solicit more strikes, and it won't hang up as badly.
Yeah.
I throw plastic, Assassin 5-inch, and usually you can have 3 colors: white, chartreuse, and pink. One of the 3 they'll key on that day. You don't have to get real fancy with colors.
No.
You're probably gonna pick up quite a few flounder doing that too.
Yeah. Speaking of, we can't
have flounder until December.
I know it, but I caught some really nice. Some big ones too, like for our.
You think they can read too?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that they can read. I'm just saying here lately in the last couple of weeks, I've caught some big flounder.
Yeah, I think we all have.
It's like 17, 18 inch flounder, which for I don't.
Well, I don't know if the commercial boys can keep them or not. I think they can, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, well, the one we caught was in a creek, like up a creek about 100 yards, and then another one. Couple others we caught was just kind of fishing some hard bottom points and stuff like that. But I was surprised at the size. We catch flounder, but a lot of 14, 15, 16-inch fish. But
been a lot of big ones this week.
But there's been some big ones.
Well,
I was surprised.
Probably again, that may be a contribution from Ian. That may have been another contribution.
It could be.
Ian.
Could be. I was just, we caught some really nice flounder. Unfortunately, we hadn't been able to keep them, but we caught some nice ones. Here's a good question. It just says Facebook user. I don't know who this is from. So if you ask this question and you want to drop your name in the comments, that would be much appreciated. So I know who asked this question. And it's kind of interesting. It says, and it's specifically for you. It says, Pat, what percentage of the trout go offshore during the freezing temps in your opinion? And have you ever went out and tried to catch them in 15 feet or so?
They don't go out in 15 feet of water. The fish that happen to are probably the same percentage of fish that you could catch out there in June, July.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's a shrimp thing before the freezes. You get the frost or the freezes or these cold fronts, and it's what those shrimp are doing that congregates and moves the masses of trout into the shallows or not. And they might drop and what I call drop and stop. They drop and stop because of their metabolism. They're going to stay right where they are for the winter. They might be in 5, 6, 7 feet of water. I remember years ago before, I think maybe a year or two I had been in business, 91, 92, an old-timer who I have forgotten his name from Griffin said, Pat, you got a few minutes? You got about an hour, I want to show you something. I said, sure, and I didn't know what he was talking about. And he says, come get in my boat. And I had written in the Woods and Water, because I was a genius, that all the pinfish went offshore and, went offshore to survive the winter. And he took me out in 4 feet of water in February and took a chicken gizzard, which is what I used to catch them, and had a cane pole and started jigging and boom, pulled a pinfish up. And he jigged a little bit while, boom, boom, boom. And after he caught about 30 pinfish, I learned that there's a whole lot I didn't know about what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So I quit writing conjectures and started really doing the research.
Right.
I don't believe that, just like when people say, well, how many trout go up in the creeks? Only the ones that happen to be on the down current side of a creek that can feel the temperature of the water are going to move up in that creek. I have caught big trout, and I mean 25, 26-inch trout, in 5 and 6 feet of water when most of the public was in the creeks. These fish don't all do anything together, and he asked a percentage number. Probably 10% of the trout never have seen a palm tree and never have seen the color green of the grass on the bank. 25, 30% of them, I think, probably stay out in that 6 to 8 foot range because there's enough shrimp for them to survive the winter and the summer. How many people here at this table, or do you know that regularly fish over 8 foot? Not me.
No,
so
not
I
really,
can't
no.
answer a question.
Just summertime.
I can't really answer his question because I don't really know.
Yeah.
But I know that when I'm out there catching blacks, we caught some trout November 8th. We had 26, I think it was, blackfish, and we caught 3 short trout in that 12-foot range.
That 12-foot,
but they weren't keepers.
Yeah,
and that's the opposite of what you would expect.
Right.
You would
and two. Well, go ahead. I'm
sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say too. I know you've probably been out in that 14, 15-foot range. You'll notice that grass gets really thin out there too.
I stay around 12.
Okay. Well,
14, 15.
When I've been out triple tail fishing,
very thin.
It gets, and the water's clear. You'll see in that like 12-foot range, 12 to 13-foot range, that grass gets really thin out there, almost disappears.
Right, which means that trout doesn't have cover.
Right, which means he doesn't have cover, so he's not going to stay out there because he don't have cover out there. So
that's right. He's not a sand fish.
So that kind of answers the question right there, because if the trout doesn't have grass in 15 feet of water, he's not going to be in 15 feet of water.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's a pinfish eater.
Yeah.
He eats shrimp when he can get them, but he survives on pinfish. If there's no grass, there's no pinfish.
Yeah, I mean, like when you and I are out there triple tail fishing on those stone crab pots out there, I mean, there's no grass. I mean, those pots are sitting on sand.
Yeah.
I mean,
mostly all you're going to see is black sea bass.
Right.
Flounder.
Right. Yeah.
If they had a stairway, if they had a stairway of rocks to run in and out on, there might be some trout out.
Right. Yeah.
But they'd have to have.
They have to have some cover.
They'd have to have that highway.
Right.
To get there.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So I think that pretty much answers the question in regards to that, and that's those fish
good
need
question,
that cover.
though.
But it is a good question. Yeah, it was a good question. I saw that on there, and I was like, "Ooh, it's kind of a good question." Johnny Hellier, spot on. Black mud draws the heat. Yeah, well, that's kind of what we look for as we get into January, February.
Black mud, rocks.
Black mud, anything that's going to hold heat, especially as that water drops down, is exposed, and then when that water comes back in, anything that's going to hold heat is going to have those fish on it. Pam Winkleman, and this is the last question, guys. If you got any other questions, get them in now. Now's the time. There's still a few more people in here. We got some stuff to talk about as far as closing up here real quick. But the next question says, what kind of hooks do you use fishing soft plastics this time of year? What is that? They've got a little glare on it.
That is a twist lock.
Dead something.
Drop dead. VMC drop dead.
VMC drop dead.
5/0. This is a 1/8. I got some 1/16. I got unweighted. Owner twist lock, same thing. Will work the same way.
Let me see the weight on those.
We just have those.
These are the swim bait hooks, folks, that have the spring in the front that you attach the plastic to, and then put your hook in it. And it's a keel. The weight it's keel weighted,
yeah.
So that you can't thread it on there, and that's why the spring is there. Yeah. And the whole configuration of the hook is set up for swim baits.
Yeah.
And Kenny and I both fished the 5-inch and the Die Dapper by Assassin, and the slick that Joey Londerno used to build. I don't know who has that hook now. And Assassin's is called the Salty Snack, in that bait that is all a copy of Eric Bachnick's now Devil in the Paul Brown series.
Oh, those Paul Browns are good.
And
we haven't even touched on Paul Brown.
This hook has a sufficient gap.
Yeah.
It has sufficient gap not only between the point and the shank, but it has a sufficient gap between the eye of the hook, where the spring is, to put these larger baits in there. And so you can fish from 5 to 7-inch soft baits with it.
Yeah. So I know you had said you were looking for that larger gap. Is that why? Just because so you can fish the bigger soft plastics on there?
Yeah. If they have a thicker body from height, or whatever you call the width of the bait, or the girth of the bait would really be the proper term. But also when the girth is large and you need to get away from it in the front, then you get further back to where you have some hooks sticking out.
How do they get away with calling this a 5.0?
I'm glad. I'm glad they do, because it has a 7/0.
Yeah, that's like a 7/0. Yeah, that's like a 7/0. It's a very big. That's interesting how they get away with.
Then you look at these hooks that's labeled 4/0. It's like a 1 or 2/0.
Not dogging on VMC or anything, but it's just interesting how they because if you get the same hook in an owner, it's like a 6/0 or a 7/0.
Yeah.
Well, that's just like
and not as long.
And it's not as long. Yeah, it's got a wider gap though, that like the owner beasts. they've got a big wide gap right there between the weight and the hook. Yeah.
Well, get you a scale, a really accurate scale, and weigh everybody's 1/8 and everybody's 16th ounce jig heads, and there's a wide diversity there between reality and a lie.
So you're saying not everybody's using the same 1/8 ounce scale?
No, 1/16 is strange in them, but the 1/8 can go from weighing a 1/4 ounce to actually a 16th in the 1/8. I mean, the 1/8 is the wild man and is the joker in the deck.
Yeah.
Well, some baits you do have to go up in weight if they're buoyant. Z-Man's one of them.
Z-Mans are pretty buoyant for sure. Yeah.
Z-Man and the unfair plastics are buoyant. You have to go up an 1/8.
Yeah.
So even when we say fishing unweighted, I mean, if I'm throwing a bigger Z-Man, like a 5-inch Z-Man, I'm going to have an 1/8 on there, which would be like a unweighted on a assassin
because of the density of plastic.
Right. Yeah. And that's, you could just about do a whole show just talking about different hooks and different uses for the hooks and all that kind of stuff, which may be something we get into in the future. Last minute question coming in at the deadline. Pat, what hook do you use for pinfish? I know you said before, but I forgot.
Okay, if he means to catch them with, it's a number 14.
I think he's probably using.
To fish a live pinfish under the float, under the back bays. I use a 5/0 Bass Pro Shop XPX. It's called a round bend straight shank. It is not the offset shank. It is a straight shank round bend worm hook. It has cuts on which are what I call cuts on the shaft to hold the worm, which I roll down.
You pinch those down?
Well, if you pinch them, if you grab and pinch them, they'll break, and then the hook will cut you, or it'll break the hook. I roll them with a pair of pliers, and that pinches them down, but I'm rolling them down by rotating.
Now, why is it that you like that specific hook?
That specific hook has a small enough gauge, the brad or the wire itself, the gauge of the brad or the wire, and it has the gap that I'm after, the 5/0, and the length of the shaft. The length of the shaft keeps you from killing fish. And when I don't kill the fish that people with gulp and a 1/0 hook on a down jig do.
Sure.
They're killing 5 times as many fish as I am, and they think
them.
And they think they're artificial and purist. And,
right.
That they're special.
Right.
And I'm not the Neanderthal people think I am in regards, because I'm using the largest hook. I used to use a 6 and 7/0 worm hook, and they quit building it. They've retired. They, meaning the manufacturers, have retired 7 hooks that you use for live bait, and all of them were light wire, big gap. Most of them were, except for a couple, were actually worm hooks like I'm using now.
Yeah.
Because no one else builds it.
Yeah.
If they build a 5 or 6/0, it's a grouper hook. It's got a wire.
Yeah.
It's got a wire the size of a number 4 gauge wire. I mean, it's huge.
Sounds like you need to talk to somebody and have them build a hook that fits that.
Oh, I'm not the Roland Martin. They think that.
So there you go. Hugh Deb White.
5/0, if I didn't say it. 5/0.
5/0 long shank, kind of a long J hook, right? I mean, essentially.
It's just a straight shank worm hook.
Yeah.
And it's XPX
with an extra long shaft.
Thinner wire.
Yeah. So if somebody made a thin wire long shank J hook in a 5/0, that kind of suits your needs.
Well, the Gamakatsu, the shaft is about a 1/4 inch shorter, and so I get more fish that choke on it.
I gotcha.
The Gamakatsu.
So what is it about that long shank that you think keeps the fish from choking on it so much?
Because the nature of a trout, I'm going to hook him when we set up on him. I'm more likely to hook him in the mouth because of the size of that hook. He's not as likely to swallow it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to hook him where I can release him alive.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, because I mean, I can't tell you how many times most people, when you think of a pinfish hook, they're fishing like a 2/0, octopus style, circle hook.
Well, circle hooks are for I can't say that word on the air. People who are afraid. Okay. To set the hook.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I bought these to try something different, but they're definitely not the size gap that I was thinking they were.
Yeah. Another, another person who's been on the show, Evan.
That make a great
Appalachia Inshore. He likes those kale hooks.
That's what I use.
Yeah, for the kale hooks.
And I thought that was going to be similar, and it turned out not to be.
Yeah, well, and I can't remember why he likes the kale hooks.
The kale was designed to bottom fish with because you didn't hang the rocks. It was designed to catch redfish on oyster bars, pretty much. Yeah. And because it rarely hangs up.
Yeah. We use 4/0.
4/0 kale hooks?
4/0, which is a bigger, because they have a bigger gap than, obviously that 4/0.
Right.
So it'd be more like the 5/0 that he's using.
Yeah.
But you spend more time in that shallow water where you need that kale, though.
Right.
You won't get hung up as bad.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to do that.
Now you're mainly fishing that kale under a popping cork, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's still going to drag.
Yeah, and then you drag bottom a little bit for sure if you're in there, less than 2 feet. 2 feet.
Won't be long. That popping cork will be going up. Hopefully. Hopefully.
What's a popping cork? I don't know what a popping cork is.
Oh man.
All right, so I guess that's gonna be. Dude, we've put in a good hour and a half tonight. That's pretty good. I guess we're gonna about wrap it up. If nobody has any other questions, now is the time to get those in. I just want to touch on a couple things before we close. I want to make sure we thank Keaton Beach Bums because they're one of our sponsors. Jared and Monica, like we said earlier, they just had a baby, but I'm in Keaton Beach Bum. But every time I come down here to Keaton Beach, for anything that I need, whether it's food, gas, ice, bait, whatever, they've got Aqua Dream Cold Spoons in there.
Yeah, I've been buying the
So if you need some of those, they've got saltwater. They got saltwater assassins in there.
Oh, yeah.
They got saltwater assassins.
A really good
in there.
selection of assassins.
Yeah, got saltwater.
They probably have more assassins than anything.
They've got some Z-Man, but mostly assassin in the plastic.
Yeah, and
then they have unfair mirror lure. They have Little Johns.
They
have a lot of stuff.
Great tackle selection. So if you need anything, obviously stop in there. And if they don't have something in there, you just talk to Jared and Monica, and usually they can get it in.
Yeah. Great pinfish traps.
Pinfish traps. The ice room in the back comes in clutch, man. Since they put that ice room in there, that has been a game changer for me. But
the ice machine's unreliable.
Yeah, for sure. And so if you need anything in there, like I said, they got it. And the gas is just as cheap as you can get it anywhere else, too.
That's the only place I buy it.
Yeah. So, and they got non-ethanol and regular, too. So, and then we also want to make sure we thank Stephanie from Keaton Beach Vacation Rentals and the Trading Post.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes, Stephanie's been awesome.
And I got to thank both of them because, like you said, we got busy, and both Pat and Stephanie, I literally got a hold of today.
Yeah. So we put this together last minute. We'll try not to be so last minute next month, but we might be just right back here in Keaton Beach again next month as well. Just real quick, as far as Stephanie, I mentioned it earlier, but I think our audio wasn't working. But they've got several houses, vacation houses for you to stay in down here. The boat house is the one. They got 3 different, I guess 1-1s that you can stay in, whether you're coming down here just fishing with a buddy or you got a large group.
1 bedroom, 1 bath.
And you can stay in the boathouse if it's just you and a buddy, or if you got a large group coming down. They've got a great outside area with a fire pit and cornhole and a barbecue and wet slips. All their places have wet slips, but that boathouse is money as far as that goes. It's got a great little common area for you to get together in the evenings and hang out with your buddies. Fish Gills, Margaritaville are larger places. Fish Gills sleeps 7, and actually can sleep up to 12 people, so that's a big place. Margaritaville can sleep up to 8 to 10 people, so that's a big house. They got a Little Oar House, which is a smaller kind of 1-1. It sleeps 2 to 4, and the SS Keaton, which is a 3-2, and sleeps 4 to 8. Again, all their places have ice machines, wet slips, cleaning stations. You can rent kayaks. You can rent bikes, all of that stuff, everything that you need here. And then obviously you see all the great stuff behind us here at the Trading Post, from hot sauces to clothes to boots to any little.
We might have to quit having it here.
Little trinket things. Why is that?
Because my wife keeps adding to this shopping list every time she comes in here.
Yeah, it's hard to get in here. It's not a huge place, but Stephanie does a great job with space, I guess. Yes. George would say it's cluttered, but Stephanie does a great job of getting all the stuff in here. I keep telling her she needs to knock
out this wall and just... No, she don't. My wife list will get even bigger.
But yeah, anything that if you've come down here and you forgot something, it's a good chance you can come in here at the Trading Post and pick it up, whatever it is that you forgot. So we want to thank them again, Stephanie and George. We really appreciate them being flexible and working with us. Pat, we appreciate you, man, coming on.
Appreciate the invitation.
Last minute, and Pat, this is not the last time you'll see Pat with us. Pat's awesome. Kenny, I think we're going to wrap it up, man.
Sounds
good. And we will see y'all again in December. I am Jay Carson. This is Kenny Mullins. We will see y'all in a month. Have a good one.
Probably a couple weeks.